welcome to this week's edition of the Paperboyz. We are the Courier's full-time sports team, and after a hiatus of a couple of years, we are back to talk a little smack, maybe solve some of the problems in today's sports world, and address the issues that are capturing today's sports headlines. I'm Courier sports editor Doug Newhoff. I'm joined today by assistant sports editor Jim Sullivan to my far left. Wave, Sully.
Hi there.
Carson Tigas to my immediate left.
Yeah, the couple year hiatus took me out of the picture. I haven't been here since then, so my first ever Paperboyz.
You are about to be rewarded. And to my right is Nick Pateros. Say hey, Nick.
Hey, how's it going? I think this is my second one. He shut it down after my first, so hopefully we'll get a little longer run here this time.
There may have been a reason for that. I don't remember. So, gentlemen, let's get right into it. Sully, enlighten us. What do you have today for the rest of the story?
Well, it's this. It's I was going to the NCAA baseball tournament for the first time in 25 years. In 1990 was the last time they won the Big Ten championship. So there's that piece of trivia. And there's one more thing. During that year, Iowa played 3 teams that no longer have Division I programs. Wisconsin, Iowa State, University of Northern Iowa.
Interesting.
And here they are again, back in the spotlight. A tremendous job done by Rick Keller and his players.
Pretty amazing how fast he really has put that program back on solid ground and gotten them pointed in the right direction.
It is, and it's no coincidence that when he shows up, teams start winning. I think Rick Hartzell said it pretty well a couple of weeks ago. He takes kids that aren't necessarily achieving a lot, turns them into good ball players. He makes it fun for them. He has his methods. You know, he tries to keep a loose ship, but at the same time, he tries to teach them to play the game the right way.
Theoretically, he does have a monopoly on the state's best players, so right, he should be able to put together a pretty competitive roster.
You would think, although there's always a history of, as there are in any other sport, players leaving the state. I think that's part of it. You're always susceptible to the draft. There's a possibility, for instance, that some players he's recruited could be gone before they even get to campus this year. So that's always part of it, but in that respect, he's not dealing with anything that anyone else in the country has to deal with.
My question about that would be, what was Jack Dahm doing before him? I mean, if he comes in 2 years and has all this success, and I guess where was that before? If he's able to do this,
it's a good question. I really don't have a good answer to that, other than by the end of it, it sounds like morale wasn't particularly good, and Rick came in and sort of said, everyone here has a clean slate. You know, we're just going to evaluate you as I see you, and not what happened in the past. So he did that, and I think they had some success right out of the gate, and that helped. And I just think that he has a way with kids. He's very good with people. I've never met Jack Dahm. I know nothing about him other than the fact that he's a former coach at the University of Iowa. And whatever it is, it works.
I think you hit something right on the head there. I think Coach Heller, and we've known him here for numerous years, but he just has a way of getting the most out of kids. They perform above and beyond maybe what's expected sometimes, and that separates one coach from another in a lot of respects. We don't want to get hung up there on that too much. Nick, this is, as you look at sports this time of year on a broad scope, I mean, we've got NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, Major League Baseball's in full swing. We just had the NFL draft. Our high school sports are just all over the map right now and on many, many venues. What's significant about this week in sports history?
This week in sports history, I went back to the world of baseball. May 27th, 1968, you had Montreal and San Diego being awarded National League franchises. And I think if you follow those 2 franchises, the Padres, they've made 2 World Series appearances in 98 and 84 and have gone a combined 1-8 in the World Series. And then the Expos, their best bet was probably that 94 strike season when it looked like they were putting things together, and now they've moved to Washington. So it's kind of interesting to see just back in 1968 that those 2 were awarded franchises, and they started there in the 69 season.
Interesting.
Yeah, just lately in the news to update it, the mayor of Montreal, I think, met with the new commissioner, Robert Manfred, lobbying for another chance for Montreal. So we'll see where that goes. I don't know that there's any teams in MLB that are really looking to move there in that bad a shape financially. Maybe Tampa. Excuse me, I don't know. The other thing about San Diego is that its owner in the 70s, the McDonald's magnate named Ray Kroc, actually got on the public address system after one particularly bad outing and ripped the team and apologized for their play. And that's not something that every owner, no matter how justified, would do.
Carson, what's your story this week?
Yeah, I want to talk about LeBron James. He seems to be a pretty good basketball player, and with that comes the comparisons to Michael Jordan. And the other night, 37 points, 18 rebounds, 13 assists in 47 minutes. He had a triple-double in the third quarter. He's playing on a team that was basically the Knicks roster last year. You look at him before he went to Miami, the Heat weren't doing much. After he's left Miami, the Heat aren't doing much. When he left Cleveland, the Cavs weren't doing much. He comes back, he has them on the verge of the NBA Finals, but it seems like everybody likes to hate this guy and kind of bring down what he's doing. After the game the other night, he does an interview with Rachel Nichols, and he sits down on the scorer's table, and I hear people, "Oh, all right, LeBron, make sure everybody knows how tired you are," or "Yeah, LeBron, all about you." Well, he did put up 37, 18, and 13. So I'm just wondering, what is your guys' opinion of LeBron James? Maybe how he compares to Jordan. I'm not asking you to make a definitive claim about where he ranks, but what do you think?
Well, I don't compare people who are of that caliber. I mean, you can't say one is greater than the other. There's circumstances that make them great. They're always different. It's not ever apples to apples, but they are certainly two of the top 5 guys in my list of all-time greatest basketball players in the NBA. I personally really enjoyed watching Jordan play, and I think he had, by and large, some tougher matchups because he was dealing with maybe a little bit quicker guards that were trying to cover him. But it's hard to deny what LeBron's done. He's pretty special.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. It's just a matter of opinion at this point, whether you want to put one above the other. But Sully, what do you think?
He only played 47 minutes in that game. That's it. He had to sit. Oh, that's awful. How dare he? It would be interesting to find out how Michael Jordan would react to today's media. I think that's the biggest difference between the two. Jordan certainly had his share of critics, especially early on when he wasn't winning championships. And there was the beginnings of what we see now, but certainly not the internet, not message boards, not 24/7 cable as we have now, and certainly not the people in ESPN who have made a cottage industry out of criticizing LeBron James. All of that stuff is true. The careers aren't perfectly parallel. There's some differences. LeBron's had some notable failures in playoff games and with teams last year, for example, but he's had some tremendous successes. And for whatever reason, he doesn't get credit for it the way Jordan did. I think a lot of it is just due to people like Skip Bayless on ESPN who have made a living out of criticizing him. If Jordan faced that sort of scrutiny today, I don't think his legacy would be as good as it is now, but that's something we'll never know.
Yeah, so you bring up the credit, and the other night he made a big 3-pointer, I think, to break a tie in overtime, and then you had the final basket to push it back to 3 points. And Nick, what is your opinion on the kind of criticism was that he wasn't clutch? I guess, what do you think about that?
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, I think the only criticism you can have with LeBron is you look at Jordan's track record in the NBA Finals, and when he gets there, he's going to win a championship, and LeBron hasn't done that on every occasion, but I think Jordan had maybe more talent around him. You look at that first Cleveland team LeBron had, that's incredible work he did there. I mean, who else was on that roster? Anderson, Varejao, and I mean, so yeah, I think he's definitely a clutch player, and obviously has made some big shots throughout his career, as they all have.
Yeah, to wrap it up, I think he's a great player. A couple more championships will do him well if he's going to continue on the track in this LeBron versus Jordan comparison, but he's doing all right for himself for now.
One more question in regard to that. I mean, let's put them both in the same situation. And let's say that Jordan's coach designs a play at the end of the game for Jordan to throw the ball inbounds, somebody else to take the potential game-winning shot. And maybe they ad-lib, Jordan does his own thing, he makes the game-winning basket. But do you think Michael Jordan goes to a press conference and takes credit for telling the coach that he's not running that play and changing it? That's the difference between LeBron James and Michael Jordan, in my opinion.
Might have been a little more subtle about it. I think he would have done exactly the same thing as far as, he might have been worse. He might have literally shoved people out of the way to get the basketball. That's the sort of competitor he was. But that's a good question. I think maybe Jordan had a little bit better feel for the public than LeBron does, what to say, what not to say. I mean, we forget that back then he was making millions of dollars already by the time he won his first championship on endorsements. He'd been on the public eye a lot. So I would say he's probably a little more polished than LeBron was or is.
Maybe that goes back to the debate, with college versus the LeBron coming out of high school. Jordan had that time to get seasoned at North Carolina and maybe had a better feel for how to deal with the media and the public there just from his time playing college basketball as well.
Could be. I just in a lot of situations, I think LeBron gets a little full of LeBron, and that doesn't in any way take away from his abilities as a basketball player, but they're different.
Rubs people the wrong way, and that's kind of what the issue is.
Okay, let's talk about some other things that have been in the news here lately. Probably not our favorite topic around here since we have virtually no connection to horse racing, but we've got the Belmont Stakes coming up Saturday. American Pharoah runs for the Triple Crown. A little bit of controversy in regard to that. Some people think that there should be more time between the races to allow these horses to recover more. Some people think that it's not fair that people can put fresh horses in the Belmont Stakes to compete against a horse that's run the first two legs of the Triple Crown. Bob Baffert, I think himself said he doesn't have time for any of that argument. I mean, the Triple Crown should be difficult to win, and in my opinion, they call these horses thoroughbreds for a reason. If you can't run 3 races in 2 months, I mean, I don't know how much of a thoroughbred you really are, but what do you guys think?
I think it should be the same as it always has been. If we're going to compare Triple Crown winners from the 1960s and 70s or however far back it goes, then I think you got to play by the same rules now if horses are going after the same thing.
I would agree with that. I don't think you can expand the season. I don't have any great problem with the fields and every Triple Crown race being different. I think that's what Secretariat had to face and some of the other horses that have been involved in that. And I don't, realistically speaking, I'm not sure there's anything that horse racing can do about it. It's such correct me if I'm wrong, but each track is its own governing body, I believe. There is no, in other words, Pimlico is under a different set of rules and Belmont.
There's no connection.
There's no connection. Also, you really can't tell, track A what to do if you're running track B. So from a realistic standpoint, there's nothing you can do to influence, at least, in terms of rules, regulations, what someone else is doing. I do think that the 5-week season is a big problem for horse racing because in this day and age, the NFL is a 12-month-a-year industry. The NBA has gotten there. MLB has tried to get there. NASCAR is doing that. And I think what happens is to horse racing, 3 weeks after the last race, Triple Crown or not, people will be talking about somebody else or something else. Peyton Manning, LeBron James, whoever. But, so I think that, as much as anything, is a problem for horse racing.
And actually, it's a great period of time for horse racing. If you look up recent history, 3 of the last 4 years, you've had a horse going into the Belmont with a chance to win the Triple Crown. So that's pretty impressive. And then I just think the Belmont's just kind of its own entity. That's a tough race to win. I think you have to go back to 2005 to find a Belmont winner that's won one of the previous 2. And then I think it goes back to 95 before a Kentucky Derby winner has won the Belmont. So I mean, it should be a tough accomplishment to win the Triple Crown, and they're all their own entities. But I think it's a great period in horse racing when you've got a horse that's in the mix.
Well, hopefully we get a Triple Crown winner this year. I mean, it's time for another one. Give horse racing a little jolt in the arm, so to speak, and maybe generate some more enthusiasm. But let's move on to college basketball. Another thing that came up in the past week or 10 days, the Rules Committee has proposed a number of changes, some fairly significant, that are going to impact the college game. My question, and Carson, you're kind of our main college basketball guy, what does this mean for you and I, for Iowa, for Iowa State, and even trickle down to Division III, to a Wartburg program? Kind of run through some of the changes that are proposed and what you see them meaning to those teams.
Well, the biggest change, and the one thing you're going to notice the most, is the shot clock going from 35 seconds to 30. And kind of the initial thought on that is it's going to help offenses who can score better, but really it's kind of the defenses that are going to benefit from that, because what happens so many times with the 35-second shot clock, and I think it's part of the reason they wanted to change it, was that offenses had a chance to run their offense twice, basically, and you had to play defense twice. And you see them run in action once, if they don't get what they want, so they pull it back out, and they have plenty of time to run something else and try again. So I think the defensive-minded teams are really going to benefit from that. Other than that, a lot of the changes are kind of the pace of play and trying to get a more free-flowing game. They've tried to do this for a couple years now. It doesn't quite take. For various reasons, the players don't really respond to it. They just kind of keep doing what they're doing, and then the refs, by the middle of the year, the refs have kind of forgotten about it. So they're trying to make a focus on that again. There's going to be rules about screens, and they're expanding the restricted arc under the circle from 3 feet to 4 feet. So there'll be less collisions under the hoop is what the goal is, I think, and try to make that block charge call a little bit easier to make. So in the end, I think the more fundamental teams, it's gonna the big banging teams are gonna have a little tougher time. The fundamental teams who kind of have a way of getting around things like that are gonna prosper.
We see defense change with that. Will there be more of an incentive to just sit back in a zone and make teams shoot jump shots with the shorter shot clock, as opposed to getting out and defending somebody man or trapping and really getting after it on the defensive end?
Yeah, perhaps. I've thought about that because with the zone, I mean, it usually takes a couple passes and you got to go inside and out to try to find something. So, yeah, you could see more zone. You're not going to see that at Northern Iowa. They're still going to be playing man-to-man, but that's definitely something to look for.
What about more full court pressure? I mean, if you can take most of 10 seconds forcing a team to get the ball across midcourt, that doesn't leave them very much time left to get into their offense. So is that a strategy that you think some teams will go to now?
Yeah, maybe. I wouldn't expect it as much because I know they're trying to clean up the hand checking, away from the basket. 2 years ago when they first went to these rules, I know you and I had a plan to put on full court pressure and kind of for that goal to give teams less time in the half court. Mm-hmm. But then they had Rick Hartzell come in, who's a college referee, and referee one of their scrimmages, and he was like, "Hey guys, with these new rules, we're going to be calling these hand checks." So you and I had to scrap that plan. They had Wes Washman, they're like, "Hey, we got a quick guy, we can send him, make him guard somebody full court, but if he's going to get 2 fouls in the first 10 minutes, then we're not even going to try it." So they had to scrap that plan. And that's going to be another consideration for teams playing full court press, just with those hand check rules.
Yeah, I am not real fond of the shot clock change. Excuse me. I think what happens is you'll see more and more desperation shots at the end of the clock. We saw that a lot in NCAA tournament games where teams run out of time because of the defense or lack of execution or what have you, and you end up throwing up 25 foot off balance shots that may not even draw iron. So I think that's a little bit of a problem with that. The one I do like very much is the timeout changes.
Yes.
I would be, more than any other sport, basketball has a problem at the end of games. In football, that you can, actually people try to speed up the game at the end of it by running it through the line or doing what have you. Baseball is relatively immune to that, although some people say that's not necessarily good. But basketball comes to a complete dead stop a lot of times just when it should be getting to the most exciting part of the game. And I would be more radical. I would almost eliminate timeouts in the last 2 minutes. If your team is that well coached, if Coach K has his kids that well trained, they should be able to go out and execute in most situations and do what they're supposed to do.
I'd go a little more radical too. I mean, I'm a proponent of something at the end of the game to reward the team that has the lead and possession. If you want to foul if you're behind and you want to foul every 10 seconds and send them to the free throw line, the reward for the team that has the lead should be greater than 2 points. I mean, they should get three free throws. Maybe I'm just throwing that out there, but there should be some way to neutralize that so that it's not as productive for the team that's behind by double digits to go out and foul you every 10 seconds and try and trade 3 for 2.
I think I agree with Sully. I don't know if I would be as radical as him in eliminating those late timeouts, but I think everybody would almost agree that there's too many timeouts and the game takes too long. And it's kind of shocking that they actually went to it because less timeouts means less commercials, which means less money. I'm surprised that they actually did it.
Well, they'll find their money.
They'll raise the rates. No problem. I do like 30 seconds for another reason. I mean, I think being as close as we are to you and I basketball and watching how Coach Jacobson has built his program, I remember so many possessions last year where they were so good defensively for 30 seconds. But the second time that offense is able to run through, they finally get a breakdown somewhere or a mismatch. And I think you take a good defensive team like Northern Iowa and take 5 seconds off the time that they have to defend, and they become an even better defensive team.
Does it become more of an individual game, though? I mean, is it just somebody in isolation making a play as opposed to a team working an offense, getting your 4 passes in and getting a quality shot?
There'll be an adjustment period. And one thing about the 30-second shot clock, and Ben Jacobson brought this up when I talked to him last week, was you look at an NBA game with a 24-second clock and the shot clock's at 7, 6, 5, and they're fine. Mm-hmm. And if it gets to 10 seconds in the college game now, they're scrambling around. So, and he says there's going to be adjustment. It's going to get under 10 seconds, and teams will be fine. They'll still be able to run their stuff. They'll adjust to it, and the offense will just look a little bit better on the short shot clock.
Change is always interesting. It'll be
and this is a big year for change. This is a lot of change. Usually every year there's a couple of tweaks here and there, but this is a lot of changes.
Well, let's move on to Major League Baseball. apparently guys are finding new ways to cheat. This should come as no surprise to any of us. We've watched baseball all our lives. Steroid era may be fading away, but now we've got sunscreen of all things, and pine tar that pitchers. Last week, 2 pitchers were caught using this substance on their arm to get a better grip on the baseball, allegedly. From my point of view, if somebody's throwing 95 miles an hour and I'm standing up there and the ball's coming at my head, I really would prefer they have a really good grip on that ball, so that it doesn't get away from them and take me out of the game forever. But are we just being enlightened now to something that's been going on forever? What's going on?
I'd say that's the case. It's interesting that you bring up the control issue, because that's the point that a lot of people who cover the game on a consistent basis make, that those rules are a little bit silly because it actually helps the game. That you want these guys to have something to keep their hands moist so they know where the ball is going, and to all of a sudden start enforcing this strictly doesn't help anybody. The problem MLB has, of course, is that we have these rules outlawing, foreign substances that go back to the 20s that were designed to help offenses, and some of these people are being incredibly obvious about it. I mean, Michael Pineda last year practically wore a tar pit in his neck. He had so much on there, and I think I don't remember the pitcher's name who got caught. Will Smith, I think it was, for the Brewers, who had a bunch of stuff on his arm. I think if you're subtle about it, they'll let you go. If on the other hand, you carry a bucket out there with you, then you might be in a little bit of trouble.
Well, Pineda's interesting because that's a guy, I think he got busted twice and he had it on the hat, and then he did the big glob on his neck, and now this season he's having one of his best years of his career. He had that 16 strikeout gem in a game earlier. So is he getting better at hiding the pine tar, or is he pretty darn good without it? I mean, how much of an advantage is this stuff, and can you still have pretty good control of the rosin and the things that are legal?
It's interesting. Both of my kids were pitchers. Sully, your son was a pitcher. So we kind of develop, I think, a habit of watching the mannerisms of pitchers more maybe than a lot of baseball fans. But, pitchers have a lot of quirks, and they're always going to some part of their body. Either they're rubbing the bill of their cap, or, they're touching their shoulder. And you watch these repetitions of these motions over and over, and you wonder, why are they doing that? There isn't any reason unless they're trying to gain some kind of an advantage. So I wonder if it hasn't, like you noted, probably been going on forever, and most guys are a little more subtle about it than Smith and Brian Matus and Pineda have been.
Well, the guy that comes to mind really is Gaylord Perry. Now, Gaylord Perry not only cheated, but he made the act of fake cheating an asset. He would touch every part of his body before every pitch, and it would freak out batters. They couldn't tell if he was actually loading it up, not loading it up, or just wasting someone's time out there. And it worked. He's a Hall of Fame pitcher now. And so you can't tell me that there isn't some latitude towards cheating in baseball when a guy like that, not only cheats but succeeds at the highest level possible.
Well, and the rules are just guidelines, right?
Yeah.
They're not.
I can kind of compare it to the deflating of the footballs deal that Tom Brady's in. I mean, how much an advantage is it really? But at the end of the day, it's against the rules. You knew it was against the rules. You did it anyways. You got caught. Here's your punishment.
And as long as we have competitive sports and money at stake and so forth, somebody will always be looking for a little bit of an edge. So I guess that's the world, professional sports world we live in, at least. Let's move on. Sully, any takeaways? Nick, you were there as well from the state track meet last week.
It was Cedar Falls had a nice meet, especially at the very end of it. They just missed getting a top 3 trophy. I think if they had done a little bit better in some of the individual events, that would have happened for them. But they have a very solid nucleus coming back with Dennis and Harrington, and the guy really to watch is Trey LeBeau. Trey LeBeau is a freshman, and he is going to be an impact athlete in at least 2 sports before he's done basketball and track and field if he chooses to stay with it. So that's one thing. The other thing was it wasn't a particularly good year in the middle 2 classes, 2A, 3A. You had some teams that are traditionally good that struggled. I would look for that to change sometime down the road here, but for now, there just wasn't a lot there. 1A, I think, had a number of good athletes do well, especially the Engel kid from Hudson, and a couple of painful losses. The Miners kid from AGWSR lost again on the last throw. So it was kind of a mixed bag from the boys' standpoint.
The boys' relays, though, in 4A were just incredible. I think you could run those races multiple times and see different results. Sure. I mean, that had to be probably one of the one of the bigger highlights from that meet is just when you have a competitive race like that with 3 teams in the mix.
Yeah, and on the girls' side, of course, Courier had an excellent meet, so I thought they did very, very well.
And I think also on the girls' side, you finally had Hudson getting that first state title. They've been so close for so many years, and that really shows just kind of how fine the line is between a championship and a runner-up team. Hudson has this girl, Taylor Wolf, in the discus. She scratches her first 2 throws, needs to get a mark just to make the finals, and then she uncorks her best throw to win it in that third one. If she scratches again or doesn't get into the finals, they don't get 10 points and they end up losing by 5. They had a couple of relays, one where the exchange was right at the end of the lane, and another one where a kid pulled a hamstring somewhere in the anchor leg and finished. So it really is kind of a fine line with a lot of those races, but it's neat to see a program like that had been good for so long with that kind of depth, finally get that championship.
Yeah, great storylines on both sides. I mean, the Cedar Falls boys winning those last 2 relays. The fact is they stepped up and won the biggest races of the season when they had to, so that was a great storyline. And as you noted, some of the things the Hudson girls did at the end were pretty fantastic too.
The fire trucks loved that Hudson championship in Hudson Saturday night. My wife was certain there was a big car crash that we needed to go check out, but now just a state championship celebration.
They do it right in small town Iowa.
Yeah.
Carson, the Bucks, Waterloo Bucks, summer wooden bat Northwoods League team starts tonight on the road at Alexandria. You probably don't have a lot of feel for how they're going to be yet, but what do you see on paper at least?
Yeah, it's hard to gauge in terms of how good they're going to be, how many games they're going to win, because they bring in these guys from all over the country, and especially because it's a fairly new team from what they had last year. I know they wanted to make some changes from last year, but what I can tell you is they have kind of established a winning culture here these past 2 years, and as I get older, that becomes more and more important to me. That you see it in high school sports, and you can see it in other places, just having a winning culture and just kind of establishing that base, and just from management to the coaches, and I think that does pay off in one way. And also the new ownership, I think that's a good deal for everybody around. It's going to be probably a little bit more fun at the ballpark, maybe some bigger crowds, and that doesn't help or doesn't hurt the wins and losses either.
Yeah, they have an impressive list of promotions from what I've seen early on that should get fans out.
Free TVs, free cash. Yeah, pretty much every night of the week they got something going on.
It's great.
With Iowa's baseball success, are there going to be some of those Hawkeyes that'll be making their way over to the Bucks this summer as well?
There is, I think, one or two Iowa guys, 2 or 3 Illinois guys. They've had Illinois guy the past 2 years, I believe, that was really good for him. He was a Big Ten Player of the Year, and then Illinois won the Big Ten championship this year, and he recommended a couple guys from Illinois to come in, and so yeah, you think they should fit in pretty well.
All right, we'll look forward to that. Their home opener is
Thursday
night
against Mankato Moondogs.
All right, Nick, it's postseason soccer time. I know we have, as I look at the rankings each week, a lot of good soccer teams in this area. Mm-hmm. How does it shake out as far as what you see?
Well, obviously, Waverly's kind of been one of those programs the last couple of years that has really been at the top. They have a nice facility up there with that Waverly soccer complex. And on the boys' side, Alden Muhammadic's done a really good job with that boys' program. They've finished third the last 2 years at state. They've had double overtime losses in the semifinals, come back, get third. And now this year, they might have one of the better teams. They're undefeated going into the postseason. So you'd have to think, they have great defense. They've been able to plug guys into their attack, and you have to think they're a pretty complete group. It's kind of interesting, though. They're undefeated and still ranked number 3 in their class behind, a couple teams with losses there that have played some bigger schools. So you never know how that's going to shake up. On the girls' side, Waverly was in the finals last year, and they seemed to kick it up a little bit later. And a couple interesting matchups going on tonight. Even Carson will be covering the Cedar Falls Waterloo West boys, and those are 2 teams that have shown they're capable of knocking off some better teams throughout the season. And then Gladbrook, Rhinebeck, and Columbus's boys meeting in the first round. That's a tough first round assignment. You'd have to think whoever gets through that will have a shot at making it to the state tournament this year.
Yeah, a lot of good soccer. I feel like we cover a lot of soccer through the spring here on our staff, and there's probably a reason for that.
And I forgot to mention the small school girls, too. You've got Union, Waterloo, Columbus, and Denver that'll all be in the mix. I think Denver and Columbus.
They've had a good run this spring, so yeah, we do. We have a wealth of quality soccer teams in this area. Well, that's about all the time that we have for today. We're always interested in your feedback. Feel free to contact us by email at sportsdoor@wcfcourier.com. And until next week, I will leave you with these words of wisdom from the wide world of sports. Somebody famous must have said this at some point or another, but if what you did yesterday still looks big to you, then you haven't done much today. Until next week.